Welcome, everybody. My name is Pasha. You are listening to the Agency Operators Podcast, and today I'm joined by John Horn of Stub Group. How you doing, John?
Doing great, Pasha. Good to see you.
Thank you for joining in. I'm real excited to speak with you because I know that you're in charge of a team that focuses just on Google Ads. Google Ads has been around the longest. We've been using them since the beginning of our journey in e-commerce. I've been an Amazon seller for 13 or 14 years. And the first paid sale I ever sent was Google traffic to Amazon. So having somebody in front of me that really knows the ins and outs is always a great pleasure. So before we jump into the main topic, I definitely want to ask, what was the journey that led you to become the CEO and founder of Stub Group, and that process? Because I know you've been in that position for a long time. Stub Group has been around a long time. But just even prior to that, like what brought you into this career path and kind of making that decision to walk, you know, independent agency owner?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's dig into it. So, I'm sure some aspects of my story are shared by many, and some probably a little bit different. Everyone's got their own path journey of getting to where we're at right now. For me, I've been here at Stub Group for I think about 11 years at this point, a bit over a decade. And prior to Stub Group, worked in different kind of marketing roles in different places. But with Stub Group, had a very cool opportunity because it was actually founded. I can't take the credit for founding Stub Group. It was founded by two other gentlemen, one of whom is my brother, so knew him pretty well. And they founded the company, like I said, a little over a decade ago, and really focused from very early days on the paid digital advertising space because we could see how much opportunity there was. There were so many businesses. Obviously, it wasn't new at that point, but there were still many businesses who hadn't yet made the transition from traditional media over to digital media, and they were doing that. They needed help. They needed people who knew what they were doing. They needed how to figure out how to track results, how to run campaigns, all that good stuff. And so we saw opportunity there. And so started Stub Group. I came on along with the founders as essentially employee number one. And then we bootstrapped and grew from there. We figured out how to run successful campaigns by doing it ourselves, by working with different clients, by building up our client base, and then by bringing on additional talent over the years to help us out and grow our team of support for our clients. And so kind of started, just doing everything and running campaigns and all that good stuff. And which I still get to do some of that even to this day, but took over the CEO role about 5 years ago in that range. And just get to work with a team every day and lots of great clients and figure out how to live in this ever-changing world of digital advertising, respond to all the things that get thrown at us, and keep at the cutting edge for our clients.
Very cool. So your brother reached out to you with that.
Exactly. Yeah, it was that connection of him and the other founder he worked with is what got me in the door initially to work with them as a first employee, and then it's something I found I loved. Google Ads was really fascinating, other platforms as well, and just kind of grew from there and expanded over time.
So did you have a lot of kind of exposure to digital marketing prior, or that was like kind of like you're really like when you got kind of into it?
I would say that's when I primarily got into it. Before that, did different things like, copywriting, some email marketing, some kind of wholesale marketing type stuff. But in terms of what we would call and think, digital advertising, really cut my teeth on the early days at Stub Group.
Very cool. All right. So now, being so many years into it, how have you seen Google Ads really evolve? Because Google and Google Ads are the same thing. So as the internet changes, AI comes in, people are doing unlimited amount of blog copywriting and changing how SEO works and all of that. That's definitely affecting the way ads are performing and costs and probably the way that you're speaking to your clients. So over that large time frame, how has Google and Google Ads really evolved?
So many ways, like you said. It's definitely has matured a lot over the last decade. The golden days of incredibly cheap cost per clicks and just ridiculous stories, that those don't usually happen anymore because it has matured as a platform and there's a level of competition that is different than they used to be. So there's still plenty of success to be but not the kind of success that you sometimes see in the very early days of a platform where people haven't adopted it yet and you get all the traffic for a particular keyword or phrase or whatever, and you go to town. And so with that maturation of the system, there's also has to be a maturation of the advertisers working with that system, and more, I'd say, sophistication in how you use the platform and understand the platform in order to still be able to run successful campaigns. So you have to really understand your numbers as a business of what you can afford to be paying for, acquiring new customers or acquiring new leads. And you have to understand how the different aspects of the campaigns you're running are playing into the overall funnel, where the waste is that you can cut, etc. Some things I would say that have changed over time. Definitely Google's use of automation. That's been something that has changed dramatically over time. Machine learning, AI, back in the day, there was a lot of button pushing. You would, all right, let's segment this campaign by device and by time and by all these different things. And you'd have different percentage bid adjustments. You'd constantly be tweaking and doing different things manually, looking at the numbers, making changes. And most of that these days is done by machine learning. It's able to look at patterns, look at just way more data than a human can look at, and also look at the different, signals of, hey, one person's search is going to be different than another person's search. And Google has access to back-end data that we would never be able to see as advertisers. And so much of those, bid strategy decisions that you might make, sometimes even what keywords you're targeting, things like that, are controlled by Google these days. Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, which is again why that sophistication has to kind of play into things.
Okay. So what's the primary role now for a Google Ads agency? Like you said, people want to pay for something that they see labor, right?
Oh.
So if you're saying, okay, well, the machine's doing it all for you. All right, so what are we paying you for then? I mean, obviously there's a good answer for that because you have the experience to navigate the machine, but is it just more than navigating it?
It's a fantastic question. So there's a couple things that go in. There's definitely less button pushing, like I talked about, than there used to be. Although there's still certainly plenty of manual work that goes into things. But it's really important, for an advertiser running campaigns to have that strategic support of, okay, well, what types of campaigns should we be running? How much trust can we put into the system? Which are the guardrails we need to put in? Because Google likes to basically say, hey, just let us do it all. There's these auto apply recommendations, or these automated assets, basically like, yeah, let us run everything. And usually that backfires. Usually you end up in a situation where Google is making money, but you're not necessarily making money as the advertiser. And so you've got to have someone who understands those guardrails and says, yep, this best practice actually is a best practice for you. Whereas this one over here, let's not do that, because you're going to waste, a bunch of money on worthless display traffic or whatever the case may be. So that's super important. Things like, working on the data side of things. So these machine learning aspects, these AI aspects that Google has, are only as good as the data that's being put back into them. And the really sophisticated campaigns, the campaigns that usually work the best, they may be using automated bidding strategies, but they have to know, okay, well, what's converting, how much revenue is coming through, where the order's coming from. And sometimes if you're using, offline data sources as well, like let's say you're a lead gen company and people are calling you, you've got to be able to put as much of that information back into the system as possible for Google to make those decisions. It's garbage in, garbage out, as with many things. And so when things go wrong with that data input, as it always does, I don't think we have any client where it always works perfectly. You need humans who are watching, monitoring, and can recognize when it went wrong and fix that fast before the system just uses that bad data to completely go haywire, mess everything up. And then you've got a new long learning period after you fix it of just getting back to where you were before. So those are just a few of the benefits I would say that agencies still bring to the table these days.
So you're saying that the deep learning and the automation that Google has already put into place it doesn't really replace the work that you're doing. It's helping you, and it's not necessarily a bad thing in that regard. Like, it's not taking anything away. It's actually making your job more efficient because you're doing less kind of manual task, you can call it. And just really focusing on the strategy, the implementation, and then setting up those guardrails, like you said, just keeping an eye out. So really it is the kind of blend between the human understanding the psychology and the direction that the brand wants to take, and then working with the machine to actually kind of get in front of the right people at the right time.
Absolutely. It's a great tool that can save a lot of time, can do many things better than humans can, but it also needs good direction, good monitoring, good accountability, good data, or else things go south quickly.
Right. All right, John. So tell us, why do PPC campaigns fail? What are the number one or number two, number three reasons? What do you constantly see across the board?
Yes, many reasons why PPC campaigns fail. I think the first one I'll say is just wrong expectations coming into them on behalf of the advertisers. So we see this all the times where advertisers either have unrealistic goals, like, hey, I need to acquire new clients, $1 per client to make this work. Well, you shouldn't even begin with, in most cases, because that's never going to happen. You're never going to have a successful campaign. Don't waste the time and money to, get annoyed a month, 2 months down the road. Just go do something different. So you got to have realistic expectations in terms of what things cost, where the market is, what realistic conversion rates are, things like that. You also need to, again, we talked about the data side of things. You need to be in a place where you can feed good data into Google. And so often we'll see advertisers kind of start and be like, oh, we're going to see what happens, see what works. But they don't set themselves up to be able to track what works. They spend money on Google Ads, they get traffic. Maybe they get orders, maybe they get leads, but they don't know where those are coming from, how many, which parts of their campaigns are working well, which parts just wasted ad spend. And so there's no way to get more efficient and to scale if you're not tracking as much as you can. Now, ironically, the third thing I'll say is putting too much trust in the tracking, because we're at a place these days in terms of the customer journey where there are a lot of gaps in conversion tracking. There's a lot of times where someone, maybe they see your ad on their phone and they come and place an order on a computer, or they've got an ad blocker that prevents your cookies from firing, or so forth and so on. So there's plenty of places where your ads may actually be working better than it looks like if you're just looking at like the in-app, return on ad spend that Google Ads is reporting as an example. And so while you should definitely look at those things and track that as accurately as possible, you should also be looking at bigger picture metrics, things like media efficiency ratio, where you're looking at your total revenue, your total ad spend, and seeing how is that changing over time and how is the efficiency of that changing over time. And when you're looking at kind of multiple data points, that helps you have a better rounded picture on what's working and whether or not you should be scaling your budget, you should be cutting your budget, changing strategies, doubling down, things like that. So there's a few examples we could definitely talk about more examples if you'd like, but those are some of the top ones that come to mind.
That makes sense. Okay, well, I do have a couple other questions in addition to that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of firing off conversations that I have a lot and just thoughts that I have on my own. Big one for me is PPC versus SEO, and I hear mixed responses when I ask that question. Before I share what I've heard and what I think, maybe we share the same thoughts. What do you think, PPC or SEO? What's more important?
I believe both are best. I believe you should be investing into both because they each have a unique role. And also, when you have good PPC and good SEO at the same time, you are exponentially increasing the likelihood of getting business because A, there's just more opportunities for someone to click through a page to your website. And then B, there's that reinforcement of someone sees your name in the ad. They scroll down. Oh, they see your name again in the organic result. These guys know what they're doing. They're everywhere. And so, yeah, best of both, or I should say both is best in my world. For new businesses starting out, obviously SEO can take a while to make work. And so often we'll see them start with PPC because they need results quickly. They need to see if their offers are working, things like that. And PPC is a way to get that traffic quickly. And then also see what keywords should they focus on over time on the SEO side of things to try and capture more free traffic.
I see. So you're using PPC as a way to kind of gauge what SEO is needed. So
Yeah.
on Amazon, it works a little bit differently because you're sending that PPC traffic to a listing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have a optimized listing, then for sure you're not going to get any of that placement by Amazon. Amazon doesn't know where to show you. So you actually need the listing first, then you run PPC, and then you might go back and refine a couple details. In this
Mm-hmm.
case, because you might have a wonderful website that just doesn't have certain SEO optimization on it, even though certain keywords are there, there's all these other meta fields and all kinds of other things, right, that need to be filled out. So you can use PPC as a way to kind of collect that data, go back, put it in there, look at it again. So they work really hand in hand, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're 100% right. It works different on the Google side than on the Amazon side, because really on the Google side, your organic results aren't impacted. Well, this is controversial. Some people will say that they definitely are impacted by what you do on the paid side of things. From what I've seen, the experts I've spoken to, I can't point to any specific correlation between like you ranking better organically if you're spending money on Google ads. From what I see, they're very separate. And so you can run Google ads, get traffic there. Separately from that, you can work on the organic side of things. If you have great organic, that's not going to necessarily improve your Google ads campaigns. They kind of work separately in that way, a little bit differently than the Amazon side of things. But again, from a perception standpoint, from a customer or potential customer standpoint, when they see you in multiple places on the page, both paid and organic, that really increases the credibility of your brand. And again, just numbers wise, it increases the likelihood of them clicking through. So there might be some things like if you've got, great branded traffic coming through and you don't have competitors going after your branded keywords, you might not want to invest a lot of money into branded search, for example, just, capture that organic traffic. But in most other cases, for competitive keywords and whatnot, I recommend, focusing on both channels.
Do you guys ever send any Google traffic to Amazon?
Great question. We do a little bit, but I would say very rarely. What we do more is working with Amazon sellers who want to diversify and add an additional channel on top of Amazon and say, okay, I want to start going direct to consumer through my website, be less reliant upon Amazon and also not have to pay Amazon's fees and all that fun stuff. And so we've worked with a lot of advertisers who have Amazon presence, and then we're expanding to their own website and helping them figure that out. A little bit of saying direct to Amazon, but that hasn't been a real focus of ours to this point.
Right. Yeah, I think as an Amazon seller, you definitely want to, well, every e-commerce brand is looking at their exit valuation. And so every M&A firm or professional will say that you want to diversify as much as you can, because when you have D2C presence, you own the customer essentially, right? You have all the data. Amazon keeps that information. So the more you can kind of diversify, I agree it's better. Also on your website, I mean, when you compared conversion rates on Amazon to your website, conversion rates on your website will be lower. But there's a good reason for that, because how you send traffic to your website and versus how Amazon, that people go on Amazon to buy stuff.
Exactly.
You're sending traffic to your D2C site based on a number of different ways, and not all the time somebody's in the process of looking for something to buy. Sometimes they're just looking for information, or they're looking to solve a problem, and your product happens to be a problem that is the solution for the problem that they're solving. And so they might come back a couple times and everything. So very interesting. So just curious, back to the SEO thing, like what does SEO actually mean for you? Because back in the day, it was blogs. Everyone was saying blogs. Now AI, I hear, all right, use AI to do 1,000 blogs, and that doesn't work anymore. They hate you for it, right? Google gets very upset. So what, in your opinion, because you work, kind of the SEO thing is married to PPC, what is good SEO right now?
Yeah, I'll give my opinion. I always get the caveat too that definitely the paid side of things is more my area of expertise. So the organic side, I know enough to be dangerous. But in terms of what I see working right now, and the experts that I work with in the SEO side of things, at the end of the day, it's still the quality of the content is the most important thing. So it's not about throwing up tons and tons of blog posts, like you said. It's not about throwing tons and tons of content to Google. It's about, okay, do I have really good content that people are actually finding helpful and interesting? Am I presenting that in a good way? For example, do I have videos on there as well that people are watching? Do I have videos on YouTube maybe that are pointing people back to my content and creating a bit of a cycle? Things like that. I know for our own website, some of the articles and things that we find rank well organically ourselves are where we have that kind of content loop, where we've got a YouTube video that we've created about the topic. We link from there to the page on our website. We also have that content on our website. It is genuinely helpful to people. It addresses a need. They're spending time scrolling through it and reading the content, watching the video. And then we've seen some of those things get picked up by the AI overviews and be linked to as sources in those overviews that Google provides. And we've definitely seen an uptick in traffic to our website in those situations where Google has linked to us as a source. So from what I can see, those AI overviews, this is a broad statement, but they're not just keeping people on the first page. They're not stealing all the traffic away from the publisher. We definitely see a lot of people clicking through from there to our content to read more information on our website.
Very cool. I recently got contacted by somebody. It was a lead for the agency, and I was like, "Where did you find us?" Everyone loves to ask that question, right? It gives you so much information. And he goes, "Oh, I think I found it on GPT, right?"
Mm.
And I'm like, "Okay, so if you're showing up in Chat GPT, that means that you're probably indexing pretty well for certain things. Do you have any idea how one can optimize for showing up for Chat GPT searches?"
That's a fantastic question. I have the same question right now because I'm seeing Stub Group showing up times in GPT. I'm like, okay, well, must be doing something right. What exactly are we
Right.
doing? How do we replicate that? What I see generally is I'd say the content that I see showing up in GPT is similar to what ranks well on the Google side of things. So I would say it seems like on a high level, similar ranking factors are at play. But yeah, I would be remiss to give specific ideas because I'm still asking that question myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this what is GPT really doing, right? It's just going on Google just really fast, way faster than you can. But still, it's I'm doing right now some research on how to optimize the back end of Amazon listings and using GPT for that. And that's been a very eye-opening experience for me because we're getting into the finer details of GPT. And I've spoken to some people who really work with it a lot, and they're not really impressed. And I'm always like, "What are you talking about? This is an incredible tool."
Yeah.
But then they're like, it's just picking up patterns. It's just like a language model thing. It's not really that, like, once you get into the math behind it, it's actually not that impressive. And through that experiment that I was talking about, doing that thing with the back end of the listing, I started to see what they're talking about, where if you give it a couple, more questions than it needs to be asked, or if you're giving it too much data, not being extremely precise about what column and, everything,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have the ability to decipher what you really want.
Mm.
And so there's still so much opportunity there.
Yeah.
So all it really is doing is just doing what a human would do, and has the same basically options as you do. But still, it's so interesting to figure that out. And the reason why I'm doing that thing on Amazon side is because Amazon is a search engine like Google, for different reasons, but it's shopper based and intent based search has become so I don't want to say it's not prominent yet, but it's become a hot topic in my industry. And the reason why is because now all of a sudden Amazon starts to try to figure out what is it that you really want without actually writing it, which
Mm.
is new. And it's because of AI. And it's the same type of thing where now how do you optimize your listing in a way that feeds that machine based on what you're looking for versus what you're just typing in, and it's not any longer where it's converting into something where it's not just like top keywords dominate. It's like, no, you have to, relevance is always going to be king. So curious, the mirror of that on the Google side with relevancy, like how do you guys target for relevancy versus just keywords, because that's where everything is going?
We see it exactly that same type of thing on the Google side of things, where Google has very much switched to more of that intent side of things, and you see that in a couple of different ways. So, even if we're running campaigns, let's say Google search campaigns, where you still select keywords, what a keyword means today is very different than what a keyword meant back in the day.
Right.
Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. So, you could have an exact match keyword where you're telling Google, okay, I'll only show my ad to people who exactly search this. And then you start looking at the search terms that Google's actually shown that ad to, and you're like, hold on, that's not exact match. Like that the words aren't even in the keyword that you showed my ad for. And sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, that's converting. I never would have thought of that, but cool. And sometimes it's like, okay, well, you're wasting my money. And like, a great example, we were advertising, business internet. And Google just kept giving us search terms that had nothing to do with business, and it wasn't converting because we were only selling business internet, not residential internet. And we actually kind of had to flag that to Google, and their engineers were like, let's see if we can do something about this, because it was just so bad, so clearly not the intent. So the system sometimes gets the intent well, figures it out well, sometimes not so much. And then you see these Performance Max campaigns, which is a newer campaign type from Google. It's been out for a while, but it's still definitely newer than most other campaign types. And it is very intent based. So you don't select keywords in Performance Max campaigns. Instead, you kind of provide data to Google. So if you have a product feed, if you're an e-commerce site, you provide your product feed. You can do it for lead gen as well. You can provide some different signals and pieces of information to Google to try and guide them towards what you want. But at the end of the day, they go out and decide what is relevant to you and what is not. And again, sometimes it works really well, and sometimes they really miss the boat. So it's one of those things where over time, I believe we'll continue to see improvements as the system figures things out. But also this goes back to the question we talked about earlier of why hire an agency, why work with humans? Because sometimes the system just does not figure it out right. And you've got to come in and kind of push and prod it and pull it to try and convince it of what you actually want, because it just can't figure out the context itself.
It's such a relief to bring in somebody who has expertise and has suffered, be able to kind of listen to you and translate that into the language of that bot. And it's like you don't know what you don't know. So you might think you're saving money, but then you go into Google, you're spending thousands of dollars on stuff that is not performing. You're trying to, figure it out and pull your hair out, like looking into looking at YouTube videos, and like you start becoming this engineer instead of just like investing into. So anyhow, I think operators, having great operators in those seats is going to be super important, whether it's an agency or just like a person that you hire. But you need specialists to operate these systems 100%. Same thing on the Amazon side. Essentially, people go through so many of these trials. I constantly hear there's so many problems that you don't even know are around the corner. So it's so nice to have somebody to help you navigate that terrain. And really, there is an ROI, because you're just saving yourself all that, not just nerves, but real money. Just like you get the ad spend directed towards what you're actually trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
You mentioned lead generation. That's an interesting one. So with those PMAX campaigns, are you seeing more success, I imagine, on the e-commerce side than on the lead gen side or local business side?
Definitely, on average, much more success on the e-com side. What we see often with PMAX for lead gens is they'll drive a bunch of leads, and the leads will be absolute trash. Spam leads, robot leads. You call a person back, it's like, I never heard of you, I never called you, and it's just garbage. There's a few exceptions here and there. We have some lead gen clients where we've actually figured out a way to make it work. But yeah, a lot of the time it ends up being a waste of money, and we just go back to regular search campaigns or other types of campaigns.
Well, Google Ads for agencies does work. I mean, in my industry, maybe I haven't tested it enough, but it is so expensive. I mean, typically it is, because it's a really high ticket win if you're able to get it. But
it's very expensive. Absolutely. So you're talking about like advertising an agency itself via Google Ads, right? Yeah. What I've found is, as with a lot of things, niching is really important. So if you want to go after keywords like, best Google Ads agency, well, you can do it. You can get the traffic, but you're going to spend easily like $40, $50 a click. A lot of, the conversion rate's probably not going to be great, because there's just so many options people are looking at and clicking through.
Right.
But if there's something unique that you do, so for example, we do a lot of work in the Google Ads compliance space, helping advertisers fix things like ad account suspensions and whatnot. And so we build up a name, content information, and we can run successful advertising campaigns there, because there's more of a niche where we can kind of own it and say, hey, this is what we do. We're the number one resource, and we can get the conversion rates where we need them to be in order to be successful.
Yeah. So again, it's that relevancy, right? When you're going for those short tail keywords, you're going to spend just tons of money trying to compete with people who have more money than you, basically, right? Like, yeah, that makes sense. Still, it's a hard one to crack. I mean, you still need, like, to advertise an agency, you need so much money to really get that right, to the point where you can kind of make predictable, those kind of assumptions that are going to come out and kind of be accurate. So, but anyway, very interesting. John, I really appreciate all this. This is really good use of your knowledge, and some gold nuggets in here for sure that I'm looking forward to share with my team. Any last thoughts that you wanted to share, or just wanted to share with the audience, like where they can find you if they're looking for Google Ads help?
Last thought I would share would just be, if you're an advertiser, especially since your audience is really in the Amazon space and e-commerce space, I would say if you're looking to kind of move over to the Google side of things to diversify your where you're at right now, definitely look at your average order value and make sure you've got enough margin, your average order value, your lifetime customer value. Make sure you have enough margin to make that move, because with Amazon, you can get a lot of stuff organically. You can still sometimes get relatively cheap cost per clicks. It is pretty expensive in the Google side of things, all things considered. And so if you have enough margin to work with, high enough AOV, high enough lifetime value, you can still run very profitable campaigns and acquire a lot of people. But if you're selling $5 widgets and people aren't coming back and repurchasing, Google Ads is probably not going to be a good use of your money, because it's just too competitive these days. So that's a thought I would give. And then in terms of where to reach us, Stub Group, stubgroup.com. Reach out through there. We'd love to have a consultation with you, chat about where you're at, and see if we can help you with Google Ads or other advertising platforms as well.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.